It was a victory over one of the world's most enduring dictatorships. A victory hastened by British political and military support.
It is great to be here in free Benghazi and in free Libya. Your city was an inspiration to the world as you threw off a dictator and chose freedom.
But one young Libyan who chose freedom can't enjoy its fruits. An ardent revolutionary, Magdulien Abaida's facing the cold reality of exile on the edge of the North Sea. She's been given asylum by David Cameron's government to protect her from some of the very forces that Britain helped triumph in Libya. It's an irony she can barely believe.
To have this revolution and to work it hard for this revolution, and then in the end, after that, you are just have to leave it because it's not a safe place for you anymore. During the revolution, everybody was united, all was working together. But now it's quite difficult.
Sunderland, where she knows no one, is now her temporary home at the end of a tumultuous year and a half when she joined protests against Colonel Gaddafi, helped organise medical and food supplies for the rebels, and then, in liberated Libya, began to campaign for women's rights. It was that struggle against discrimination, she believes, that put her life at risk. One of the women's meetings she attended in Benghazi this summer was interrupted by armed men.
They came and took me from my room, like 5 men, armed, and they asked me to go with them. And when I asked them who you are, they said, you will know.
Her captors, she says, were members of Libya's revolutionary militias. The brigades were formed from volunteers who took up arms against Gaddafi in the spring of last year. But after his overthrow, many refused to integrate into a national army, and some that operate as a law unto themselves, particularly in Benghazi, have strongly Islamist views. It was one of those militias, Magdulien says, that seized her during the women's rights workshop. She was released, but abducted again next day and taken to their base.
Someone came in and he started kicking me, and then he was hitting me with his feet and with his gun. He was telling me that I will kill you and bury you here and nobody knows. He was calling me like an Israeli spy, and he was calling me whore and bitch. Tell me about your morals, and you don't have any. He hit me in my face, and he started he keeps swearing.
These are the bruises she was left with.
He was telling me, I can kill you right now here and bury you here, and nobody knows about you. And I thought that I'm not gonna, I will be killed in that place.
Eventually released, but accused by the militia of working for Israel, which she strongly denies, Magdulien fled the country. Her application for asylum here was supported by Amnesty International.
Magdalen's case is really emblematic of the kind of behavior that as Amnesty International we've documented since the fall of the former government. Armed militias are acting completely out of control. There are hundreds of them across the country. They arrest people without warrant, detain them incommunicado, people who have been tortured, people who have died under torture. And all of this is happening while the government is both unwilling and unable to really rein them in.
In September, angry crowds in Benghazi stormed militia bases, demanding an end to the lawlessness of the brigades. That came after accusations that some had been involved in the attack on the US consulate a few days earlier and the assassination of the US ambassador. The Libyan government vowed to bring them under control, but so far to no effect.
Daily relatives are calling us because their brothers, sons, husbands have been abducted. When I was in Libya last time in September, in one day I met 3 families who had relatives die under torture in detention in the same day.
Among those kidnapped and tortured is one of Libya's best-known brain surgeons, Dr. Hisham Ben Khial. Is that embarrassing for Britain? The UK spent hundreds of millions of pounds on the air campaign that helped overthrow Gaddafi, but did it also help unleash forces that can't now be easily controlled?
We are concerned, but then we're working with a government that is also concerned about it. We're trying to make sure that we provide advice to particular ministries, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of the Interior, Ministry of Defence, in human rights issues. We're training up people, we're spending money on projects to deliver more people who are capable of understanding human rights principles and putting them in action. So we are trying to be strategic with our help, practical in terms of assistance, and we're working with people who recognise that although they are making some progress, clearly they've got many challenges after 40 years.
The hope is that Libya's new government, appointed this month after a long period of political uncertainty, can end the abuses. The new Justice Minister is a former human rights lawyer.
We need to put an immediate end to all human rights abuses, particularly in Libyan prisons and detention centers. This is a problem that we are facing. We are not shying from it. We are not denying it. We know we have a big problem, and we have the will to put an end to that.
Back in Sunderland, Magdulien Abaida thinks it'll be a long time before it's safe for her to go back. Grateful to have been given refuge by the UK, she's going now to pick up the papers that will allow her to stay in Britain. She'll be campaigning from here to end what she sees as efforts by Islamic fundamentalists in the new Libya to roll back women's rights.
It's like now we have to control women, we have to hide them so we can improve, which is like it's a big shock for us.
The revolution would have been impossible without the work of women who fed the front line and performed many other tasks. Afterwards, some set about empowering themselves to demand a bigger political role too. They were horrified that the rebel leader Mustafa Abdul Jalil used his Liberation Day speech to suggest making it easier for men to have more than one wife.
This is not why we made the revolution, not for men to marry for women. The revolution was made by women and men, and we wanted more rights, not to destroy the rights of the half of the society.
And again, when the female compere at the ceremony to transfer power to the new parliament was heckled off stage for not wearing a veil and replaced by a man. There have been reports too of women harassed by militias for sitting at cafes on their own at night. But Libya's always been a conservative society, and though she doesn't live in Libya full-time, activist Sarah Mazik thinks that women are achieving far more now than they ever could under Gaddafi.
Currently we have 33 women in our Congress. We have 2 ministers we had 2 ministers in our previous transitional government, now we have 2 ministers in this government. So I think there's a lot of positive signs. I do hold a lot of hope on our new Prime Minister. I know previously he was a human rights activist. I know that he supports fully women's rights. We need to look at the overall picture, and the overall picture, what's happening in Libya, as far as I'm concerned as a Libyan, is really in some ways a miracle.
But Magdulien can't return to the activism that helped make her a target of the Islamists' wrath. If you went back to Libya now, what do you think would happen to you?
They will detain me directly.
And then?
I don't know. Maybe they released me before. Now they wouldn't, like, if they catch me again, they wouldn't release me anymore.
It is shameful that in New Libya someone should feel frightened and had to flee Libya and seek political asylum. Once we have the rule of law and human rights respect in Libya, and I hope that will be very soon, that Libya will be safe for her to return.
We are your sacrifice, Libya, women activists sang at a conference in Tripoli last year, the words of the national anthem that was banned during Gaddafi's time. But Magdulien didn't want to be sacrificed in this way. Her walk to freedom is longer and lonelier than she could ever have guessed.